I know the concepts, but struggle how to share them effectively with participants. Some are highly interested, some soak it up, and then there are ones who don't understand why it's important or plainly disagree with what I'm sharing. So a couple quick thoughts. Why it's important. Yesterday, I was doing a session with a senior leadership group, and I had the very senior leader, the president, kick it off, talking about the mission, visions of the organization, why it was critical. The senior leaders needed to look at issues of race and disrupting racism, creating racial justice in their organization. I usually ask leaders to tell a personal story of why it's important to them. And so you can't always have a senior leader in the room to help the group understand the organizational mission, vision, values, and why it's critical to the success. A couple times I've worked with organizations to have the senior leaders do a video. And I'm thinking of this couple places, they actually had not only the key senior leader, a couple other senior leaders, some other people in the organization having an apparent diversity of folks participating. Some of their customers, in this case it was a university, they had some students talking, some of their student leaders saying why equity inclusion was critical. It was 3 minutes, so we're talking quick. 3 minutes might feel long to some of these, some folks today, but something that really gets folks hearing people's passion, why it's important, what some people call the leadership case or the business case. And that could be from many areas. Some people know it's the, quote, right thing to do. Others may help them realize that our reputation is at stake or the competition is increasing so quickly. We need to have a climate and a culture where we're attracting really talented, culturally competent folks that can really help us succeed in our mission. And so, again, having the people of the organization, people that they recognize, talk about why this is important. I start off most of my workshops pretty early, having them go meet 5 people, like in a minute, say hi, and then a check-in, how are you doing, what's up, and then a passion. What is your passion for equity and inclusion? And people that are like, what's the big deal? You hope they're matched with someone that has a passion or why it's important to them. And then I hear that out, so I get it from them. I rarely lecture or give a lot of input. These Q and A's in my webinars are such a different format for me, and yet some people tell me they're useful, so I do them. But in workshops, I'm very engaging. I have the people doing it. A couple more on this, and then I saw there's a couple questions come in. Some folks won't shift until they see the money, and so there have been times I've had HR or some leaders tell me, what does it cost to hire someone, and what does it cost to train them? And come back with those dollars and say, last year we lost 12 employees from this division. And yes, some said they went on to other jobs that were higher level or more interesting. And you never know if it was the climate and the culture or the relationship with the manager that also contributed to why it was easier to move to another job than to stay here and stay invested. And so showing the decreased numbers of employees of certain ages. So if you're hiring younger people, there are fewer, quote, people in their teens and 20s. And that'll be, I think, increasing. If you are in education, the numbers are going down. And so how do you have a business case that's related to finances and numbers? I think I had one more note. You know, when people disagree, it's like, here's, if you can see this, I'm putting my hand against a hand. It's, imagine that I'm standing in front of someone and I ask them to put their hands up, and if I ask if I can touch them, and then we're touching hands, so now I'm touching the person's hands and I push. They most likely will push back. I don't tell them I'm about to push. And that's what happens when someone disagrees. It feels like a push, and we might push back by arguing or competing or debating. And I really encourage you not to do that. Instead, say, tell me more, help me understand. So like you disagree or you have a different opinion, might be a better way to say it, tell me more, and engaging the resistance. You might ask them, what is your reason for wanting to work here? You could be working many places, and find out what their concerns are, what they're interested in. Again, some of this I might do one-on-one, but say, if not, say, thank you for your question, because you're not the only one feeling this. So I might ask the group, so you have an organization that's very committed to equity and inclusion. How do you hold the dilemma if you don't quite buy into it or believe it's not a top priority? How do you hold that dilemma when the university, this organization, this nonprofit, this corporation has said this is one of our top 4 priorities? How do you hold that dilemma? Now, no one might answer it, but you're at least acknowledging it's a dilemma. And then you may want to give them a way out. This may or may not be useful, but there are folk who historically have done a lot of work around LGBT, well, lesbian, gay, bisexual, not as much transgender. And I usually engage folks who I know are in the room and say, my guess is there are a number of folks who have a dilemma that in some religious or social organization, you were taught that being gay, lesbian, bisexual was wrong and perverted or against God's will, things like that. And actually, I learned the same things in the Methodist church I grew up in. And so we're in an organization that says we have to create an inclusive environment where we treat everyone with respect. We don't have any bias impacting us. We have no discrimination, no microaggressions, or if we have them, we interrupt. So how do you hold that dilemma if your personal belief system is counter to what the organization is asking? And have people talk about that. And if they're willing to share publicly, that can be. So in a similar way, having people tell any story in their life where they've worked in community work or in a paid operation when they've had a dilemma and how they've navigated that. That may help people. The other thing is a couple of the activities that we'll cover in the design and facilitation course. Microaggressions, getting people to really be inundated with 50, 60, 70 common daily microaggressions that happen in a way that they're generic and anonymous. I call it the gallery activity. You've seen some of my webinars, the June and July ones speak to that, that I did this year. And to really get people to sit in the daily dilemmas that folks with marginalized experiences have. And you can do that through written examples, through videos where people tell stories. There's all kinds of ways. But and the final thing I'll say is if people are still not on board, be really using the accountability structures, your supervisors, and have the supervisors very clear that this is part of where we're going and we're here to help you learn and grow, and here are the courses, but this is part of your performance appraisal. Final question I have, or idea I have on this, is a story from years ago. I was at a university and it was community service work to build Habitat for Humanity. And a group, I think it was Crusade for Christ, a Christian group, and an LGBT group, which sounds like they're 2 very different groups, but actually they had members of each other in their organizations. But there were still some biases towards each other. And so they actually came together to work together, and they intentionally matched people up to be building next to each other all day. And so be thinking about how can you create project teams, community service operations, opportunities where people who are kind of against this are also maybe partnering with people in different marginalized identities, not to teach them, but to be on projects